Yes, how's it going, mate? Are you in Denmark then?
I'm in Denmark, um, and yeah, been here for 15 years in Denmark.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, everyone in the libs, they call me the most Danish English person. Yeah, I'm becoming a Viking gradually.
What took you over there?
My wife's Danish, so
Okay.
yeah, she wanted to move back, so we moved back together.
Right. What, you met her in London?
Yeah, we met each other about 20 years ago. Just kind of before Libertines kicked off, and yeah, and we've been together since. So it's
Oh,
really good.
cool. She's been there through the whole journey then?
She's been there for the whole thing. Yeah.
Okay. Crazy times.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks for doing this, mate. Like, really appreciate it. Obviously a bit of a nostalgia trip. I'm sure you get asked, about these things all the time, but it'd be good to chat about them today. Just take us back to the 90s, really, John. Like, what was the build up? What were you up to in London, and how did you first meet Pete and Carl?
I met them. It was basically I went to I was kind of mates with Johnny Burrell. We went to school together, and at that point we were kind of hanging out in Camden, getting up to no good. It was kind of like late 90s, and one day we met a guy called Steve, Scarborough Steve, and Steve was like, "Oh, I know these two guys, Pete and Carl, and they're amazing and stuff like that, and you got to meet them." And he was a singer back then, Steve. And so, like, Steve had meanwhile been telling Pete and Carl that I had loads of gear around my house. I mean, equipment, like guitars and amps and stuff like that. And so one day, yeah, Pete just knocked on the door, and then we kind of took it from there, really. But yeah, it's funny because normally when you like join a band, you rehearse for ages and then probably never end up playing any gigs or anything. But with those, with Pete and Carl, it was like we did like one rehearsal and then we did a gig, which is kind of pretty typical, really.
Yeah.
We did a gig in their flat on Camden Road, and it was we found a drummer on the way to the gig, so we heard something good. Like, oh, you can join our band. So we took him with us, and then the electricity meter ran out halfway through the gig, so we had to have a whip around to get money for the meter. Very nostalgic.
Yeah. So how did you know Johnny Burrell then?
How do I know Johnny Burrell?
How did you know him here back in the day?
I went to school with him.
Okay, right.
Yeah. So we were kind of like, yeah, me and Johnny were kind of hanging out, and Pete and Carl they were in a band and stuff, and yeah, it was kind of like, well, I'm trying to work out who's doing what. It was like, do we all want to be in a band together? And I think I'm not sure if, yeah, it ended up like just me playing with Pete and Carl and Johnny doing his own thing. Obviously, I think he was kind of more happy doing that, really. It was like his kind of bit, at that point he was doing like this kind of folky blues stuff on the guitar, so
yeah. Go on, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, and then we played for like a couple of years, played loads, and that was amazing. And then at one point I left the band. We couldn't really seem to get any kind of deal or anything, and I left the band. and then came back when they got a deal. So that's kind of how it happened, really.
Yeah. But I was also reading that you just wanted to play bass in a band. You had that direction from early on, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, right, it's quite, I don't know if it was kind of my wisdom or just my laziness that, you know, was just saying to me that, no, I can't. I kind of tried to write songs and sing and stuff, and I just didn't really like it. And I kind of thought, I just want to play the bass, you know. But later on, obviously, like I discovered the kind of joys of writing songs and singing songs as well. But yeah, I think there's always, like, you know, it seems to be in bands, there's always too many guitar players, you know what I mean? And there's like, you kind of look at each other like, who's got the least willpower to I'll play the bass. But actually, I love the bass. I think it's great fun to play on. So it's all good, really.
Yeah. And obviously, like, hear about your kind of love for the Beatles. Was that McCartney kind of bass a bit of an inspiration for you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, you know, I think just having such a kind of a prolific bass player like McCartney, because I guess up until him, bass players were kind of a bit in the background, but then it's kind of like, it gave a possibility of, you know, you can be a bass player and also sing a song or front a band, you know, so it's not like kind of dead end role in the band, you know. Definitely an influence. Yeah.
So just in terms of that early time, then, was it Pete and Carl that were writing the songs? So obviously they were quite different. The whole style was quite different at that point. How were songs written, and how did he get together in that way, kind of thing?
Well, I remember being like incredibly impressed by the songs, you know, because you know, they had, for example, like Music and the Lights Go Out. They had that back then, you know, so it's kind of like, wow, you know, suddenly hearing a song that's kind of you know, really kind of beautiful song, you know, with amazing lyrics and melody and stuff like that. And, you know, playing in bands before that, it was always kind of a bit, you know, it'd be pretty good, you know, get good songs, but, you know, not like, you know, excellent songs, you know. So I remember being, you know, pretty bowled over by the songs, you know, how good they were, you
know. But we're not able to, like, kind of, like you say, you struggle to get a deal. Like, why do you think that was at that point?
I think, to be honest, I think at that point it was kind of the end of Britpop, and you just couldn't get arrested, you know. It was like, literally, you know, we were a great band, you know. We were like, you know, we had great songs, and, you know, we were wearing suits and looked cool and you know, we'd like literally go into record companies. We'd go into like Food Records in Camden, knock on the door. They were like sat behind their desks, and we'd get the guitars out and just kind of like start like playing songs in front of them. And you know, just no one's at all interested, you know, which is kind of crazy. You think, like, you know, we did that quite a few times. But yeah, it's just that period, you know. It's just, I think there's periods when there aren't, you know, there's no opening for guitar bands. And I think I've got this feeling, I've seen quite a few like good guitar bands recently. So you know, I think it's kind of coming back, hopefully.
But in terms of like hanging around with Pete and Carl in those days, like, seemed like it was a good laugh. Do you have obviously had a fun time running about, playing all kinds of places.
Yeah, you know what? It's just that was hilarious the entire time. It was just fun games. You know, we'd be like getting on. I remember once we like just like going to like I've been at a gig or something, got on the old double deckers, and like we started having like a sing along. You know, we're singing like "We'll Meet Again" or something like that, and the entire bus is like singing along with us and stuff. You know, just insane. You know, it's just yeah, just funny and just great. You know, it's brilliant times. Because actually, at that point, I was kind of I got into kind of bad habit of taking. I was taking quite a lot of drugs when I was about 18, and so when I met Pete and Carl, that kind of they really helped me to kind of get off drugs actually. And yeah, just by kind of you know, just by kind of like, I think I wasn't really challenging myself in any ways. You know, I was just kind of content to be getting fucked, and just, you know, sat in my room, you know, and they kind of like they had that drive of kind of really going after their dreams, you know, and their ambitions, and I think that really inspired me, you know, personally. And on a very personal level, I was kind of like, wow, you know, that's what life's about. It's about going out there trying to accomplish something, you know, challenging yourself and accomplishing stuff. And before that, until you see some of these good people that are doing it, you know, it's quite hard to believe that it's possible, you know. But then when you see your friends or someone that's actually managing to accomplish things and challenge themselves, it's very inspiring, you know.
Yeah. And so when you left the band that in that late 90s, early 2000s, what was the catalyst for that? Did you think you'd just gone as far as it could, or you tried as hard as you could to get signed, kind of thing?
Well, I think, to be honest, I think we weren't getting signed, you know. And then after I left, or just around the time that I left, that's when the Strokes kind of came out, and I think that was also like a catalyst, you know, for Pete and Carl. So, you know, it's anyone's guess whether, you know, if we'd continued playing the way we used to play, I'm sure after a time we would have had success with it. I'm sure of that now. But, you know, whether it be the same amount of success, you know, I don't know. So anyway, I came back, yeah, it's quite different when I came back. You know, it's the same guys in the band, same songs essentially. You know, same ideals, but just in a slightly different way. You know, it's kind of a little bit more heavy. A bit more attitude. You know, which is, I think, it's a good thing, really.
And then I was reading Carl say that you guys kind of almost forced a scene by playing gigs at like the Rhythm Factory and stuff. Is that how you remember it? Did you kind of build a scene around you, kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, we had a kind of a scene of sorts, you know, even before we got signed, when I was originally in the band, and it wasn't a big scene, but it was amazing, you know. It's a kind of like a big, you know, like just like a group of people like-minded people that were kind of out to have fun, you know. So yeah, I mean, I don't know, to be honest, how much she was forced, you know. I think maybe in some ways it was, but you know, I think people, you know, they yeah, they've obviously wanted to follow the band, you know, and see, you know, be inspired by a band, you know. So that's kind of what it boils down to, really, I think.
And I was also reading that you're actually on the cover of NME before you even released a single. Is that right? I mean, what was that like?
Maybe. Yeah, I remember, like, it's kind of, I guess it's like, you know, it's just a dream come true, isn't it? It's kind of the impossible accomplished, you know. And so, you know, we're kind of incredibly wary of, you know, like looking good or whatever, you know. And after a while, you just let that go, you know. But yeah, no, I mean, it was yeah, it was just like, you know, you're just kind of buzzing off it all, you know. It's just, you're just vibing off it, you know, that kind of you know, dreams going into fulfillment, you know. You just get a buzz off it, you know. It's what, you know, what you've striven for, and you're actually getting it, you know. It's quite magic. But then, you know, obviously in the history of the band, you can see that it kind of went a bit wrong shortly after that.
But you're just able to enjoy that attention while it's happening, just because you hear some bands kind of say, you know, they're a bit wary of getting that attention early on, but I can imagine you guys are just loving it, really.
Yeah, I think I was probably the most wary of it, I imagine, but I'm kind of wary of everything. Quite cautious character. But I think, yeah, I think, no, I mean, generally, I think, you know, that it's just that kind of confidence, isn't it? It's like, knowing, you know, we're a great band, and, you know, we deserve to be on the front cover of NME, you know, because I think that's more than anything, you know. It's that the self-belief of, you know, Pete and Carl, you know, that just to think, well, it's good, you know, we shouldn't be worried about it, because, well, you should be worried about it, but in some ways, you know, we put in the hours, and we play so many gigs, and, you know, if we're not ready now, we'll never be ready for it, you know. So yeah, no holding back, really.
And I don't know if it's at the same time, but I think I saw you say that, like, at one point Pete was frustrated that he was the only one that was taking responsibility for the band in terms of songwriting. I don't know if that was before you rejoined or not.
Did I say that?
I think so. There's a point where he felt like he was leading it in terms of songwriting or something like that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's in, well, it probably would, maybe in terms of songwriting, but more, I think, you know, I imagine like a healthy band is one where, you know, everyone in the band is taking responsibility for it, you know. And I consider personally, I wasn't taking any responsibility for the band, really. You know, maybe for my own input, yeah, but, you know, just really kind of yeah, just responsibility for, you know, the fact that everyone in the band is happy, everyone is, you know, we're all enjoying it, for example, which that, you know, that I think now as a band we're all a lot more aware of each other's feelings, you know, and prioritizing, you know, a friendship and people's happiness, you know, more than the band, because that's more important. You know, it's more important that everyone in the band is having a good time. You know, everyone in the band is you know, is feeling good and in a good place. You know, because if they're not, what's the point in doing it? You know, what's the point in being in the band in the first place? If not, if one person not enjoying it or two people aren't enjoying it. So that kind of, I guess that comes with age, you know, that maybe as well. You know, you know, for myself, you know, I've started practicing Buddhism, you know, back in 2004 or 5 or something. So that's also kind of helped me prioritize, get my priorities straight with regards to being in a band and living life and stuff like that. You know, that's definitely helped me.
Yeah, do you think the whole band's kind of, I don't know, I suppose you get wiser as you get older and like learn from your past, I guess, don't you?
Yeah, you know, I think, you know, mistakes, you know, nothing you can do about them, but you can learn from them, you know, and you can decide not to repeat them. You know, we had a lot of mistakes and a lot of suffering, you know, in the band. So we should be in a good position to not repeat them if we decide not to repeat them. And we haven't, you know, since we reformed, it's been a kind of very gradual process of you know, just really kind of learning each other, getting to know each other again, and doing things a bit differently, you know, not doing the same patterns of you know, destructive patterns, you know, which we all have. We've all got our own tendencies to do shit or to do things right or wrong. So I think, yeah, I mean, like, you know, you see when we first reformed, you know, it was, I think everyone was in a different place, but, you know, now we're at a stage where, you know, we're on tour and we'll just go out together and hang out together, you know, like we used to do when we were young, which is really, yeah, it's really exciting, you know, getting your old mates back, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
That's the other thing, like a lot of people, like, you don't, you know, you a lot of people, you end up growing up and getting jobs, and, you know, you're never allowed to kind of hang out with your mates in the same way. But being in a band, you know, it's like that you actually get an excuse to go out and pretend that you're like 20 years old again.
Yeah. Got a lot of questions, so I'm going to try and weave some in where I can. Andrew Selfridge on Instagram asked about you singing, basically, like, you know, first incarnation of the band you were singing. Were you kind of happy to take a step back once the band was signed?
No, not very happy about that. No, I was kind of, yeah, I was, yeah, I think, to be honest, I wasn't really like in a position to really complain about it. But yeah, I mean, it was quite hard for me. was quite hard for me. But actually, you know, I think, to be honest, you know, just seeing how great Pete and Carl are as frontmen, you know, that kind of, you have to a point you think, well, actually, yeah, it's probably a good thing, really, you know, because they're really good at doing that, you know. So so it's got to the point now I'm like, I'm very happy doing what I'm doing, just playing the bass, doing some backing vocals and stuff. So yeah, no, if I've dealt with that, you know, at the time it was kind of hard, but yeah, so it's all good now.
I suppose it's nice to have your side projects where you can do all that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I love my, you know, I really love my side project, you know, because it just, I find it actually just quite challenging, you know, to go out and do it. But it really gives me something creatively, you know, kind of, I feel just like really kind of high off it, you know, doing my own projects. So I'm just like, we've got our first rehearsal on Saturday with my April Rainers band. We haven't played together for ages. We've got loads of new songs. We're going to do up the new songs for the album, rehearse them up. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, where are those guys from? Do you meet them in Denmark, or is it a bit of a mix?
Yeah, I met them all in Denmark. James, who's the guitar player, he's British as well. So we're like these kind of expats, you know, in Denmark. But yeah, I mean, and then there's Jakob, who's Danish, and Erland, who's Norwegian. So it's a bit of a mix, really. But yeah, they were kind of, they're great guys, and they're very, very talented as well, in their own solo stuff as well. So yeah, I'm very fortunate.
And I shall look forward to new stuff.
Yeah, no, it's going to be great, man. It's going to be great.
Yeah, and you obviously mentioned the Strokes and their kind of influence. And obviously you went on tour with them at one point. Well, how someone asked, I think Magnitude Kutchi on Instagram asked how personally you were into the likes of the Strokes and other bands of that ilk. Well,
I think the Strokes album was pretty good, really. You know, I remember like I was working in a little secondhand bookshop at the time, and you know, they had a record player and they had it on vinyl. So I just sat there every day listening to this, and everyone was listening to it. You know, obviously, everyone of our generation was kind of listening to that. And yeah, I mean, it's not really my type of music 100%, but at the same time, yeah, it's definitely good, really good, special. So apart from that, I mean, I don't think there was anything before that, really. That was kind of like, you know, when God created the world, really. You know, it was kind of the starting point. And then after that, there were quite a few bands. I mean, obviously, like Franz Ferdinand, or yeah, White Stripes, or can't think of anyone.
I know what you mean, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there were a few bands as well. We used to play with a band called the Beatings, who were kind of at that time, they were kind of in the NME a lot at the same time as we were, and they were really good, actually. They were good, but didn't quite kick off in the same way as Libertines did.
But what about playing and touring with the likes of the Strokes and the Vines? Was that like an exciting time? Like, I imagine it's pretty buzzing at that point.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when you say touring, we did 2 gigs with the Strokes.
Okay, right.
It was a big deal. It was a really big deal for us. And at that point, they were just literally like just broken through, and they were just like completely buzzing off it. Yeah, we owed them a lot, for our own band. And that should be acknowledged really for their inspiration. So yeah, thank you very much to the Stroke.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But I remember reading, I don't know if you read that Meet Me in the Bathroom book about all the kind of American bands. I think Julian Casablanca said they never really hung out with you guys much, but I guess if you're only playing 2 gigs, it's not much of an opportunity to.
No, I mean, yeah, I don't really blame them, to be honest. It's not like really, I mean, what's in it for them, really? I mean, at that point, obviously, like, it'd be different if you're, a bit older person and interested in other things, but at that age, when you're kind of like, you just want to, be in a band and play music and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, they could, yeah, I guess so. Yeah, they were. I think they were very kind of involved with what was going on for themselves, at that time. But yeah, we were all like a lot younger, right? It's like, now I remember back when the Libertines started. My mate, Guy, he used to play in a band called 80s Matchbox Beeline Disaster.
Yeah.
And they supported us. And then like years later, I met him on a Buddhist course, because he's a Buddhist as well. And when it came out to me, he was like, "Yeah, John, do you remember that when I met you at the gig?" And he was like, "No, not really." He said, "Yeah, you kind of blanked me." I was a different kind of person back then. It was a bit like, whatever. But now, I've turned the leaf. I'm a different person. So got a lot more time for other people, apart from just myself. But
yeah, fair play.
Yeah, but I say it's when you're like involved with your bands, you're in a band, it's all kicking off, everything's good, and you're kind of and then it's quite hard not to just get a bit kind of focused in yourself, I guess. Yeah, it is a bit of a struggle.
And then, yeah, just wanted to ask about recording, because I saw Gordon Raphael said that he did some sessions with the Libertines at some point. Is that right? The Strokes producer.
I don't know if he ever recorded with the Libertines, but
okay.
He recorded my band, my old band, Yeti.
Right, okay.
Very, very kindly let us. We had a studio back then in the East End of London, and he very kindly just gave us studio time, which is very cool of him. Can't remember him doing any Libertines, but it could be completely wrong. So yeah, probably am.
I'm pretty sure he said he did, but obviously I don't know the details of it. But then, yeah, Bernard Butler from Suede. What was it like working with him?
Yeah, I think it was quite interesting, his work ethic, because you know, he's a very kind of, you know, professional work ethic, which is very inspiring, actually. You know, I think just to see someone who basically doesn't give a shit about anything else apart from the music, really, which is inspiring. But I think it wasn't really, at that point, it wasn't really the kind of the match made in heaven with the Libertines, really. And I know that Pete, for example, he found it very hard to work in that way. You know, it was all about, Pete was all about kind of just capturing the vibe, you know, that's what it's all about, and just that energy and the vibe. And when you're kind of, when you're tracking stuff individually, you know, to a click track, and it's just kind of not really where he was at that point. So they kind of, yeah, didn't really, the atmosphere was a bit heavy sometimes, really. But then had obviously Mick Jones, who was the other end of the scale, who kind of only really cared about capturing the vibe at the time in the studio, and creating that kind of vibe, you know, and actually didn't give a shit about anything else, which is really cool in another way.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I was reading, did you like you ended up recording about 20 songs for that first album, is that right?
yeah, we did a lot. Yeah, I remember they kept being a little bit annoyed because Pete and Carl kept wanting to do all these kind of obscure songs that we hadn't played for ages and hadn't rehearsed for ages, right? So suddenly like being thrown like another swerve ball, you're like, oh fuck, how's that one going? You know, like it's not really what you want to know the parts, right? That's why I'd prefer to go in there knowing exactly what I'm going to do and do it, you know. But yeah, that's kind of the way we've always worked as a band, you know. It always ends up being a kind of rehearsal come recording session at our recordings, which is cool because I guess the plus side is that the songs are so fresh that when you're literally rehearsing up a song and you just get it, you get it when it hits that kind of, that absolute kind of the birth of the live song, you know, it's just like, yeah, there it is, boom. And then kind of, you know, you could maybe improve on certain parts in the song, but you know, just that excitement of having a song that's kind of standing up on its own, you know, is kind of is great to capture that as well. I've done that a couple of times with only a few times where you've kind of just written a song and you're basically rehearsing it and then recording it, and it gives it, you're kind of forced to kind of step out of yourself a bit more with it as well, because you don't know how, you can't quite remember the lyrics, and you don't know if you can sing it properly, or, so you kind of can force you to play it in a slightly more desperate way, and you know, something else comes out of it, you know.
And you know, we've talked a lot about producers on the podcast, and you know, like it's almost like a football manager who knows how to get the best out of the players. It was like Mick Jones a bit like that with you guys. He knew how to like get you going, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. I think it's just kind of being able to provide an atmosphere of, you know, a relaxed atmosphere, you know, where people feel comfortable about being there, about being recording, and obviously choosing the right take, you know, and stuff like that, and track the order of the tracks and stuff like that. Yeah, I think, I mean, the role of producer is very, very varied, you know. I think nowadays some producers do everything, you know, they write the songs and they arrange the songs and play on the songs and do everything, you know. So other producers don't do much at all, really. It's a bit of a loose term, really, producer.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's someone that's going to get results in the studio. It's got a kind of overview of what's going on.
Was it quite a rapid process then? If you're all playing live, were you able to like hammer it out, kind of thing? Like how long did it take?
Normally, it would take about probably, it could take a half a day or a day to kind of rehearse up a new song, or even finish the song in the studio.
Okay, so you were writing in the studio then,
yeah. Well,
right.
especially like lyrics and stuff like that, finishing the lyrics off on the fly. So yeah.
But were you happy with it when you finished, when you sit down and listen to it at the end of recording? Were you all quite happy with it?
I don't think we ever did, really. I think it was only 10, 15 years after that I actually kind of sat down and listened to it, really. I think so kind of like, it's quite raw, so I can listen to it now in a different way. But I don't really like listening to my own stuff much, really. There's a few bits and bobs.
I guess you're always gonna, I don't know, hear things you could improve, kind of thing, if it's your own work. Yeah,
you're normally your own greatest critic, isn't it? So that probably doesn't mean anything to other people, but it kind of be quite painful to listen to. But I can appreciate it now. Definitely. That was kind of like I was at a different point back then. I was kind of like not really able to have that perspective over it all. But now, nowadays, like when we had, sit down and listen to the last album, for example, I can do that with a bit more kind of. I think we, rehearsed it all a lot more. So I kind of, probably a bit more comfortable with it. My parts
And you mentioned Johnny Burrell, just because I was going back through your listening party that you did for both albums, actually, the Tim Burgess thing on Twitter.
Oh yeah.
And I think Carl said, I always thought it was a thing that the boy looked at Johnny was about Johnny Burrell, but he was saying it was about John Lydon. What's the truth?
I don't know, actually, to be honest.
All right.
Well, that's a book that's called The Boy Looked at Johnny, isn't it?
But it's just always a kind of an assumed thing, but I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of think, probably is about Johnny, but I imagine I don't know. I didn't write it, and I guess it could be about more than one person as well. Sometimes you kind of can have different people that inspire the track. It could be about both of them, or about himself, or it could be about loads of different things.
True, yeah. But you played with the Sex Pistols at one point as well, didn't you?
Yeah.
Were you a Sex Pistols fan, or not really?
Yeah, I mean, it was funny because when we came on stage, we had these like red jackets on, kind of hunting jackets, military jackets, and all the old punks, they were all singing Yellow Submarine. They thought we looked like the Beatles, taking the piss.
But you're quite happy with that, though, aren't you?
And then when we took him off, then they kind of like, oh yeah, they were right, actually. Not really. I think they kind of thought it was all right. But yeah, I remember just walking past Johnny Lydon in the corridor, and we were walking the other way, and he was with his security guard, and he just went to him, he was like, Libertines, keep an eye on them. Security guard, the keys are.
And then just some more from that listening party, I saw you actually played stand-up bass for Radio America, was it?
Yeah.
Is that quite an easy transition?
I tell you what, my fingers were absolutely, I had these really bad blisters on my fingers after that. So the rest of the recording session was really painful. Like huge blisters on my fingers. Never played the double bass before or since. But yeah, I'd like to play it again, actually. They do look good. You just don't want to have to lug it about in a tube, you know what I mean? It's the problem with the double bass.
Yeah. Just look like a massive hipster.
Yeah. Right, yeah, not much fun to carry about.
And then Boys in the Band, or that I think you said that was quite a challenging song to play live, is it?
Yeah, it's quite complicated, the arrangement on it. But yeah, it's always yeah, it's really complicated, actually. Good tune.
Yeah, like the video you're doing it on Jules Holland. Really, really good. Was that a big deal for you at the time, or just part of what was going on, really?
It's kind of like TV is like, that's kind of weird as well. You know, it's kind of like, I feel, you kind of get a bit dazed by all the lights, and you're just waiting around for hours and hours and hours, and you got like 3 minutes, and you just got to be good. It's kind of a bit weird. Yeah.
But I remember, like, I think you had the most active fans I've ever seen on Jules Holland, I think. Getting involved and like jumping on Gary and stuff, yeah. It's quite funny to watch. I think he's a Queen's of Noise.
Yeah, it might have been them actually, yeah, to be honest.
What was it? Obviously, I had a lot of passionate fans, and with the internet and everything, and the message board gets talked about a lot on here, the Libertines message board. Do you enjoy how much of a community it was between the band and the fans? Was that kind of obviously an ethos of the band?
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting thing is, you know, like, was like literally when we started out, there was no internet really, and by the time we got signed, there was the internet, and I think, like, to be honest, I think Pete was quite wily about using it, you know, is in a good way, you know, just like he was always like posting shit on the website, you know. We come back from the gig and he's like posting stuff, like, what are you doing? And he was like, yeah, just like, really, I think he really enjoyed it, you know. He just loved that kind of side of just, you know, excitement of being in the band and the fans in the band and the dynamic between the two. I think he like loves that. You know, not in a kind of egotistical way, but just, you know, just loves people, you know. So
yeah.
But I don't know if there were, I didn't know any other bands that were doing that at that time, really. And I think, like, you know, just posting something, you know, we're doing a gig tonight in Bedford, you know, and then just doing a gig in Bedford. I don't think other bands were doing that, you know. They probably were.
Yeah, go on, sorry.
They probably were somewhere in the world, but we didn't know about any other ones.
How did that work for you then? Was it like you'd be in a rehearsal studio or something and Pete would be like, oh, let's do a gig tonight or something?
Yeah,
Or,
yeah,
right.
it's quite annoying. Really.
It was a bit like, oh, not again.
Yeah. Yeah, because those gigs, they were all just like complete chaos. You know, you go down there and just like nothing worked. But again, then you think, actually, this is amazing. You know, halfway through the gig, you think, fucking hell, this is brilliant. So, you know, there's that kind of resistance that was there as well. You know, you kind of like.
And just one more about the recording. I just read a couple of you, I think you and Carl were saying about Danny Godfrey running in the studio in a leotard at some point.
Yeah, like a Superman costume. I don't remember that, but no, I do actually. I do remember it. It's very weird. But yeah, I mean, I was like, when I was a kid, he used to live up the road from my mum's house, and so I remember like knocking on his door when I was a teenager to get his autograph. You know? And he was very nice, actually. He gave me his autograph. And I was very polite. But yeah, then getting to the point where you're kind of hanging out together and stuff, that was also pretty special.
There were a few like older bands that kind of took a shine to you, kind of thing. I think like Noel Gallagher said he was always a fan and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think Noel's really good at kind of you know, getting engaged with new bands, you know, that you know, sort of you know, coming down to the same level and meeting bands and hanging out with them and stuff. Yeah, it's you know, it's an amazing privilege to meet musicians that you kind of you know, idolized in your youth, you know.
Yeah. And then, you know, when the album comes out and it's going down well and everything, you kind of feeling, you know, that the band's going in the right trajectory, like this is all going pretty well, or how do you remember the time, kind of thing?
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. You kind of yeah, I think yeah, it's sort of there was definitely a kind of a great positivity about everything. And unfortunately, it wasn't maintained. We weren't able to maintain that at the time. Just the way it is, really, isn't it? It's like, you know, what can you do? But yeah, you know, he's just try and use that for something positive now, isn't it? You can relate to a lot of other people that are in a similar situation. You know, it's like you can meet people, and you know, you've had that experience, and because of that, you're able to identify with them and relate to them and advise them, encourage them, you know, because you've been through that shit. You've had to do that. So that's one positive.
Yeah.
You know, you learn from it as well. So
yeah, like how I saw you posted a thing about Top of the Pops, the Time for Heroes. But there's another time where, you know, you're doing it without Pete. Like, how strange was it doing gigs without him?
I think it was hardest, obviously, for Carl, actually, and he would be, after the gig, he would be physically sick after we came off stage. He wasn't, you know, he didn't enjoy doing that at all, you know, and so for myself, you know, just like I say, I wasn't really taking responsibility for it all. So, you know, it's kind of, you know, just obviously it was very, very weird, you know. But you know, whether we should have just stopped the band, you know, that's probably probably would have been a better thing to do, really, just to stop it, you know. Would have been hard decision, a hard call.
But it's, yeah, because it's strange, isn't it? Because obviously you're gaining that momentum, but at the same time you've got other things going on, so it must have been, yeah, very hard.
Yeah,
to make decisions.
Yeah.
And yeah, was there one point where I don't know if Pete had threatened to boot you and Gary out, or he did at one point or something?
Yeah, I think it happened a couple of times. There's one time in Japan that we got, I think we got thrown out. Well, we didn't really get thrown out, but he wanted to throw us out. But you know, yeah, it's just kind of it's just bullshit, really, isn't it? It's like I don't think he really would have wanted to throw us out. But,
yeah.
That's not one of my fondest memories of the time.
Yeah, fair enough. And obviously, like that's a bit of a strange time leading into recording the second album. Like, I don't know, like how it's obviously quite unstable or whatever, playing gigs and stuff. Did you find like you grow closer with like people like Gary, who, you know, like I guess you're the backline of the band that are always together while there's other things going awry, kind of thing?
Well, I think the interesting thing is because in the interim of having broken up with the band, you know, you kind of, well, personally, had to kind of go back to normality again for a while, and there's not many people that have had. Well, there's no one that's had that experience of being in the Libertines apart from the people in the Libertines, right? So when you see each other again, it's quite joyful because you've kind of been through the same shit as each other, you know. So it's quite deep, that bond, you know, that you have. So yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think, like, you know, our friendships, you know, really, yeah, they're quite deep. You know, like you have to, like I was saying, you know, after having broken up for 10 years and you get back together and you're kind of, you know, you shouldn't be a little bit wary about opening up, you know, to each other, and then you kind of gradually kind of, yeah, okay, yeah, we can, yeah, this is kind of okay, you know, no one's like getting upset, or I'm not getting upset, you know. So you kind of gradually just rebuild that trust again, you know, and so yeah, it's yeah, some pretty deep friendships there in the band, which is great. Very privileged, yeah, and I just find them so funny, you know. All the guys in the band, they're just hilarious, you know, just constantly pissing myself.
Yeah. And I was watching the film No Innocent Bystanders, and that really comes across how much of a laugh you have together.
Yeah, no, it's always funny.
And then with that second album, I saw you saying you didn't know quite a lot of the songs that were going to go on it until you got in the studio. Is that right?
No, I didn't know. Well, we didn't. We just turned up there, and I had no idea what we were going to record. But it turned out that Pete and Carl had written a few songs, and they had a few ideas for songs that they finished off, a few old ones as well. So I think they must have had an idea, obviously, what we're going to do. Yeah, I think like, I could, I think, we can only really like see, have an overview if you're kind of really taking responsibility for the band, and then you will have an overview of what's going on. But which I didn't have. But I'm very excited about doing a new album. It's not going to be too long,
Okay.
We've definitely got a lot of tunes knocking around, so we're just trying to gauge the right time to do it, really.
Did I read you were going to do that in South America or something?
We were going to, actually. We had a plan to go to the studio, and then they booked a gig, and we had 5 days off. We were going to go and hang out in some tree house in Colombia and finish the album, but then they booked a gig, which we can't do.
All right.
So,
okay. I look forward to it. Just a few more questions about the second album. Like, obviously, a bit of a mad dynamic, bouncers in there, and then I saw you saying something about there was a fight on day one or something of recording.
Yeah, it was a fist fight on day one, which is pretty surreal. Not really the kind of ideal circumstances to record an album, But I think, I feel like Gary was saying, I think they had to kind of get out with that, extreme frustration and anger that they had at each other before they could like sit down and record together.
Yeah, like clear the air in the physical way.
Yeah. Probably better ways of doing it, but kind of, it must have worked, kind of.
Yeah.
Really helps maybe just getting like some kind of counselling or something.
A band counsellor, yeah. Is that almost what the producers become sometimes? Like, how big a role did Mick Jones play in getting things done?
He was a bit like the band counsellor, actually, Jonesy, at one point. I think he actually tried to break it up, I think. No, don't fight each other, guys.
I think it's Gary that said something like Alan McGee brought in the bouncers to keep Pete and Carl apart, but then Mick Jones was the one that brought them back together. I think that's the way he put it.
I like that. It sounded right.
Yeah. What was Alan McGee like to work with? Like, how big an impact did he have?
He was I thought he was great. He was brilliant. Yeah, lovely guy as well. Really, really cool guy, and very, very clever. Managed to get that second album out of us, and that was no mean feat at that point. Yeah, I mean, that was a pretty momentous task, really, that he managed to do. So yeah, thanks, Anna.
I think Gary said you're doing like, he said like 9 tracks in one day you're doing, or something mad.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe.
Was it a case of just when it's working, just like try and get as many done as you could, kind of thing?
Yeah, it might have just been kind of just getting kind of ideas down. I don't know if actually, I don't know if it was the intention to actually record the tracks properly. 9 of them.
But yeah, is it the strangest time you've had recording an album, obviously? Or not? Is it all par for the course at that point, maybe?
Yeah, well, they've all been good, actually. I mean, the one in Thailand was that was brilliant as well. That's I think there's all like they've all got a kind of different, very different circumstances for all the 3 albums. Like we were in very different places when we recorded them.
And the cover, like I saw Gary saying how much he didn't like the cover, and Pete said he didn't. What are your thoughts on it? I
think it's a good photo. It's definitely a striking photo. Yeah, I think it's good. It's a good album cover. I mean, it does like, yeah, I mean, it's good.
Yeah, fair play. It's definitely iconic. Yeah, I remember like Pete saying like when the best stuff was brought out, there wasn't much say from the band. Is that right? Was that more of a record company thing?
Yeah, we didn't know it was coming out. I think just the best of 2 albums.
Yeah, they think if not going to do a third, they're going to make it, kind of thing. Yeah. But what are your thoughts when that album gets done? Are you thinking, all right, well, we're gonna have a tour, or is it just a case of seeing what happens?
What when that album came out?
Yeah, is it like, oh, right now we're gonna, get it back together and start playing show? Obviously, did play gigs, but it's very like fractious still. Did you think that album might repair some relationship moving forward, kind of thing?
I mean, it was a pretty, it was a hard time. It was, I think it felt like quite a heavy period, and I wasn't even that involved with all the disputes and stuff like that. I tried to stay kind of neutral and out of it. So, I mean, for Pete and Carl, it must have been an incredibly traumatic period. I have no idea what their expectations were with it. I was kind of going along with whatever people wanted to do. But it wasn't like, to be honest, at the same time, I think everyone was still excited about doing it and buzzing off it, and everything. So there was there's a parallel thing going on where you had, like you say, had a lot of success on one hand, and the other hand you had a lot of personal problems and issues. So there was a kind of, it was a bit of a battle between these 2 paradoxes. This paradox, so I don't know what the other guys were thinking at the time, but I was just kind of still buzzing off it all, and we still had, you can still have feelings of, like when the music's working and stuff, you can still feel great about that, even though you're not seeing eye to eye on the personal level. So I think we were obviously happy when it was sounding good and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, when it goes to number one, that's obviously, even
Yeah,
for a band of your stature, it must be a good feeling still. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yes. What else we've got, John? I won't keep you too much longer. I saw something about the Black Eyed Peas being next door to you when you're recording that album as well, or something. Don't know if that's true, but
Yeah, I thought, yeah, it's like a Tom and Kitten or something like that. But, yeah.
So obviously, when things don't work out with Pete being in the band, was it just a case of playing gigs that you were contractually obliged to do, kind of thing? Was that the feeling at the time?
Yeah, we had to. We did. I think we toured. We toured it, and it got to a point where Carl couldn't really face doing it anymore, and then we had our final gig. That was it was in Paris or something like that.
Did you know it was going to be the last one then?
Yeah,
right.
I think so. I think that we kind of knew that.
Yeah, was that like a band decision, obviously?
Yeah.
Fair enough. And then how quickly did you kind of form Yeti and like get that on the road?
Yeah, well, I think that was I felt quite protected, really, because I started Yeti probably like back in 2004 or something like that, as a side project. And suddenly, I was starting to feel kind of inspired to write songs and start my own band. Suddenly could see the potential in myself and in doing the project. So by the kind of end of the Libertines, I had something, I had something to hold on to. So I was very fortunate in that way. I had something to focus on my energies on, so that, just it was you imagine, oh, right, well, everything's going to be simple now because there isn't this horrible conflicts in the band and stuff like that. But it doesn't quite. That's the thing about it. It's like karma, isn't it? It's kind of like you're karma, you can go to another country or another place, but you still got the same shit in your life that's going on because it's all a reflection of your inner life. It's kind of like, so like I kind of imagine, okay, I'll just do my own band, everything will be simple, and no problems. And but then you find out, well, actually, it's not quite that simple. And in fact, a lot of the problems were due to me, and they're part of who I am and my shit, my tendencies, and they don't just disappear because you're not playing the Libertines. You still got them, and you still have to deal with them. And so, that those years after the Libertines broke up, they were quite hard, because you kind of unwittingly built your identity on this band and being part of a band, being John from the Libertines or whatever, and that's gone. That's gone suddenly. So you have to find something else to rely on, something else to that you can trust, and you know, that so it's kind of building up from ground zero in many ways for me, you know, just kind of discovering my humanity again, you know, as a person, you know, who am I, you know, really, you know, I'm okay, I was in a band, blah, 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 but actually, ultimately, I'm a human being amongst other human beings, and I have to kind of move on from there, you know, and make a new path forward, you know, which is quite hard. And I'm sure it's hard for all the guys in the band, really, I imagine. Yeah, again, luckily I had my band, I had my Buddhist practice as well, and I had my wife. So yeah, you kind of just trying to challenge myself within the band, you know, especially in Buddhism you call it the human revolution, where you kind of you overcome your kind of negative tendencies, and by winning over them, you kind of you can also create your own happiness. You know, it's like your obstacles are actually they provide you a source. They're like a source of growth for yourself. They're not just something negative to see, but actually they're actually something positive. So you know, you kind of, after, you know, a lot of years of, you know, kind of challenging fights and battles, personal battles, you know, you kind of, you start kind of carving out, you know, rediscovering your identity as a human, you know, and your own potential, wherever you're in a band or not, you know, it's kind of, I'm still okay, you know, as even if I'm not in a band, you know, as I'm still, my life is still valuable anyway, you know. It's, but then unfortunately, you know, we got back together again, which has just been just came out of the blue, you know, and it was kind of like something that I never thought was going to happen again, and then suddenly it does, and it's like super exciting, you know. It's like, wow, that's kind of deep down, you've missed it a lot, you know, you've really missed playing in Libertines, and so it's a great privilege, you know, that you kind of get to tour about and play music and you know, share your evening with other people.
Can you remember like the first, what was like the first sign you got that things that were going to get, I'll rephrase that. What was the first sign of the band getting back together? Like, do you remember how it first happened? I heard about it, kind of thing.
Well, to be honest, it wasn't, I got a call from like a lawyer or something,
Right.
which wasn't that kind of, wasn't like the best way of finding out, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, lawyers, probably lovely people, but you know, the job can be quite soul destroying, I imagine, sometimes. Yeah, but you know, it wasn't personal at all, but it was kind of yeah.
Yeah, it's just something you didn't see happening, you said.
No, absolutely. I kind of blocked it out, you know. It's like, you kind of, yeah, I guess this is such a kind of big thing that you can't really you can't process it, so you have to block it out. So you kind of you just try and forget about it all, you know. That's my method of dealing with it.
Move to Denmark, yeah.
No, very good one. Yeah, move to Denmark, become a farmer or something now.
Was that So that press conference there that's in No Innocent Bystanders, was that actually the first time you'd all got together, or had you seen each other before then?
I can't remember. Maybe. Yeah, I think it was quite an important point, that, because it was almost like, how are we going to be with each other, from now on? This is new. Do we, are we just going to end up like just killing each other, or or are we going to try and do something else with this? And so, like, yeah, I thought it was a very funny conference, but it was quite important, if he, how you start something or restart something is very important. The first, if you can get that right, then it kind of sets up for everything else.
Yeah.
It was important, and I think it was good. It was a good conference.
Yeah. And at the end of the film, it's quite interesting, like with Carl saying, I don't know, they still feel a bit unsure about each other at the end of the film, but that's obviously must have improved since then, to the point where you're going to make a third album.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, their history is kind of is well known, the amount of problems they had. So, obviously there's a lot to overcome now. And it keeps getting better, and we're a happy band, now, really, generally, of our moment, but yeah, so it's generally amazing.
Cool. Yes, John, I'm just going to fire through some of these fan questions, if that's all right, and then I'll let you get on with your day. Dirt Royale said, what's your favourite Beatles album and why?
Sgt. Pepper. Why? Because for me, it was a kind of creative high point of the Beatles, where they were kind of quite otherworldly, really, I think, on a musical level. A lot of people say they weren't the best songs, probably weren't, but I think the kind of atmosphere and the positivity and the vibe of it was just kind of unparalleled, really, to anything else.
Yeah. I love the vibe on Lonely Hearts Club Band. You can't really beat that. Favorite bass line to play and one he's most proud of writing from the Libertines. That's from Acoustic at Afternoon.
Favorite bass line. Yeah, you get kind of certain bass lines which you kind of like, yeah, it's pretty cool. I like that little bit. That was pretty good idea. And you have them in certain songs. I don't really have one particular bass line, but I have parts of songs which I kind of think it's kind of does the job, really, and yeah, I think they're good. I always like I like coming up with bass lines more and more, really. I love bass. I think, like, it's quite interesting to see, like, how Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys, you kind of, you'd have harmonically different bass lines. We're not just doing like kind of root note, but you're kind of also doing other notes that wouldn't necessarily be the obvious thing to do. But I think that's quite interesting to play around with that a bit more, actually. So enjoying it, really.
Yeah, were you able to, like, was a lot of freedom in terms of, Pete and Carl present you with a song and it was up to you to come up with the bass line kind of thing, or did it vary?
There were some tunes that they'd actually on the first album that they had some ideas for bass lines for. They had bass lines for which I played, which were cool. But yeah, I mean, I think that's the Libertines has always been pretty pretty open in that way, you know, for people's creative input.
Yeah,
not the kind of band where you're forced to play anything, you know. Which is great. I think sometimes you can kind of control it too much, maybe. You know, you always kind of. I think it's definitely a positive thing to have diverse ideas coming into it. You know, I think if you get someone who's just doing everything on an album, could be great, but it does sound a little bit similar. I think you have the same kind of mindset for doing stuff. You know, like Gary, for example, he's playing some pretty different kind of beats that, you know, a lot of jazzy kind of stuff, you know, that you know, it only Gary could come up with that, really, you know, his feel or whatever. So yeah. So it's good. I think Libertines is very open in that way. Yeah.
Franco Grady asks, why did it take 4 years between the initial reunion at Reading and Leeds, and then Hyde Park in 2014?
I think yeah, my memory's not quite what it used to be, but there was definitely a period where I think we did a few gigs before Hyde Park. I'm not 100% about that, but it got to a point. It was like, actually, this is kind of quite fun doing this. And then after Hyde Park, it was like it just felt like, yeah, this is definitely possible. You see the potential and the possibility in it again. So yeah, I guess there wasn't really that feeling of positivity or optimism about it before then. So we had to wait a bit.
I didn't really ask about the first gig back, you know, in 2010 or 2009. Like, it's obviously on the film, but yeah, it's obviously quite a lot of nerves going into it. But how did it differ? Like, or was it the same? Was it like just fitting back into place kind of thing, that first gig back?
I was quite edgy. I mean, I think it was great, a great gig. But it was, yeah, I think, you know, it was, I think, you know, you see a Libertines gig now, you kind of, you'd probably get more kind of like joyful feeling at the concert, you know, kind of just enjoyment, really. Yeah, I think that's been a focus for us, you know, just really kind of find that joy in the music.
Yeah,
which maybe wasn't as much then.
Yeah. Sean Seymour asking, quite a few people asked about Yeti, just like if there's any more Yeti stuff coming out. Obviously, you got your other band there as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're doing April Rainer's album. We're literally going to meet on Saturday and start recording it. Yeah, we got some great tunes for it, man. Really, really cool, if I say so myself. You know, I'm just so excited to get out there. It's going to be brilliant. And I've actually kind of recording it myself.
Cool.
which is it's a new thing for me. So hopefully I don't delete it all before. Yeah, so it's he got some amazing songs. It's going to be really, really cool.
Cool.
Yeah, the Yeti, not quite Yeti. Maybe another time. Yeah, I would actually. I think that could be really, really cool to do a Yeti reunion. I think it's going to happen, definitely. So yeah, it will definitely happen. If it's up to me, then yeah, it would happen.
Nice one. UK Sound Advice just says, "Did you want to be on top of the pops?" I don't know if there's a story there or something. I don't know.
Did you want to be? Yeah, of course. No.
Brad Jack says, "What's one aspect of Danish life that you think the UK should adopt?"
I think the UK could learn a lot from Danish life. Actually, I think that's a very good question. I think the Denmark's a very kind of fair society, is where the rich get taxed a bit more, and the welfare system's much better, much stronger. Education system's much better. Healthcare's much better. So it's a kind of positive cycle, where you see Denmark is, when the UN have this list of who are the happiest countries in the world, Denmark's always either the top or near the top of that, and that's because they're being a bit more fair, and they're being a fairer society to everyone, and it's you kind of, you're stronger together, aren't you? You're stronger when everyone's thinking about the whole, not just themselves. So yes, I think we could definitely learn from that.
Cool. Magnitude Kutchi says, "Is there any contemporary music that you're into that you'd recommend listening to?"
Yeah, I've been listening to, we were in South America a couple of weeks back, and we were playing with Idols. They're really, really cool. Band called Black Pumas. They're awesome. There's loads of good bands at the moment, actually. Yeah, just can't think of it.
Yeah, what you mean?
Loads of them. DSM-4, Gabby Garber, band called Ice Age. I saw this.
Yeah, they're great. Yeah.
This, Ice Age.
Yeah, I've enjoyed some of their songs. Yeah.
I saw this Norwegian band the other day, and they kind of sound a bit like Rage Against the Machine. And they were amazing, man. The combos, they're called. I don't know whether it's as good on the record, but live they were incredible.
Juan Fox says, "Any favorite venue or town to play back in the day with the Libertines?"
Yeah, I mean, if we go really right back in the day, we used to play in a place called Filthy McNasty's, which was it's like an Irish pub in Clerkenwell, and that was just great. It was just buzzing. We got paid in Guinness, I think. It's good times. Good time. Yeah.
Yes. One more about Yeti from Dale, who just says, "Why was there a big gap between Yeti's Cave demos, the EPs, and then the debut album?"
Yeah, it's a good point. I think, we kind of got ripped off by our management actually at the time, who were kind of turning down record deals, unbeknown to us. So we're kind of waiting around for a record deal for ages, like people trying to give us record deals, but they kept on turning them down. And we found out about it, and like, oh fuck, we better release our own album. And so we did it ourselves. So that's why.
Okay.
But I think also, I think, yeah, in hindsight, you know, it's coming back to, you know, that process of like, you know, in a change in myself, you know, after Libertines broke up, I think I kind of really had to kind of look back on it now and think, well, actually, it was really good because I kind of changed a lot during that period for the better. So, so I see it as something positive, that kind of long, hard process. Something good.
And then someone asked about, is it Jake Goslin who produced the third album? He said, what was it like working, this Matt on Twitter says, what was it like working with him, and would you take a similar approach for the next album?
Yeah, I actually, I really enjoyed working with Jake. Yeah, would we do it for again? Possibly. I think it's also exciting to try different producers as well. You know, I think that's also kind of I think they can, you know, like producer can definitely bring something to the table. So I think, you know, that could be fun to kind of mix it up and do something different. We've talked about that. You know, just having like someone with a completely different way of doing stuff, you know, with different musical background, for example. So yeah, exciting. Yeah, definitely. We've got our own studio now as well. Libertines have got our own studio. So
yes, someone was asking, sorry, Think Frank on Instagram said, have you ever stayed at the Albion Rooms? I'm assuming you have.
I stayed there recently, actually, with my family. Yeah, we did it. That was a couple of weeks back, actually. The first time, it was really, really good. Actually, I was kind of totally surprised. It was actually like awesome. Yeah, it's a wicked place.
Is that where the studio is?
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's in the back. It's like a really nice studio as well. And I played a gig there as well. I played a gig in a bar a couple of weeks back.
Oh, right.
I was singing for my supper, you know.
Was it just like an acoustic thing?
Yeah.
Ah, cool.
My boy came up. He's only 12, but he came up and did a couple of songs with me as well, which is kind of stole the show a bit. A bit too good.
Well, was he singing? What, were they like covers or?
Yeah, we did I'm a Believer by the
Right. Yes.
We did There She Goes as well by the Lies.
Ah, cool.
But that was great. Yeah, it was a good night.
And just one more off Twitter from TNEF Uts.
Not Key NEF Nut.
He said, do you know it?
No.
He said, why did the exceptional Hassall penned song Sister Sister never get included on a Libertines album?
Because, well, no, I don't know actually. But it did get included on the Yeti album. It was on our album. It sounds pretty good. But yeah, you'll have to ask Pete and Carl. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, fair. I suppose just one to sum it up, like, can you pick out a high point of any of your time in Libertines? Obviously a lot to pick from, but don't know, is anything that stands out?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, probably about 2002 or 3. Just kind of just generally just kind of just buzzing off it all, and kind of like I say, kind of realizing your ambitions and just being suddenly getting to be getting paid to do something you love, and yeah, no one thing in particular, but yeah, but yeah, just gets better and better, really.